Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to start this session now. Just want to make sure that everyone's connected to the audio conference. I see someone that's in the session but not in the audio yet, so I'm going to give her a couple of seconds. In the meantime, I'm going to be doing the introduction for this class. So for today, we have this session that is all about your demand generation strategy and how can you identify opportunities with UiPath, particularly on the finance and accounting industry, or maybe even in the accounting and finance line of businesses, departments within your customers' organization. So this session is part of an effort from Ingram Micro and UiPath. We have a series of activities that have no cost to you, and we are going to be sharing, again, some of the recommendations around how can you identify and build some use cases around the accounting and finance departments or processes with your customers. We're going to be exploring first some of these main use cases and the different activities that are part of these use cases, of these processes. And then I'm going to also share with you some of the services that you can access through the Ingram Micro automation team, Hyperautomation team. And finally, we're going to be sharing some best practices around a demand generation strategy. How can you build your demand generation strategy around UiPath? And if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please feel free to share those through the chat window or the Q&A panel. Okay. So we have a number of use cases and a number of success stories around automation in the sales and the accounting industry. And as I mentioned, not only in the finance as a vertical, as an industry, but also within the different organizations, in the different departments, finance departments and accounting departments, you're going to see that the processes are the same no matter the industry. So you just need to look for those processes within your customer's organization. Yes, we can share the slide deck with you guys. Don't worry about that. So we're going to start talking about some of the key areas that are really important for this line of businesses and for this industry. So anything that has to do with all the invoicing part, the cash application, the cash flow, the logistics, how can we process automatically and more intelligently all the information around customers, partners, the supply chain, how can we process the payments, and all that stuff that usually requires a lot of information. We see that most of our customers they input all that data manually, so it takes a lot of time and it also is error prone. So through the automation, we are able to reduce that manual task. We improve the productivity of the employees and also the satisfaction of our employees, because those tasks usually, they don't necessarily add value to the business or to the development of the employee in the organization, but they are required, right? We can't set aside all those tasks and all those processes, because they keep the business moving, right? They keep the business going. So the idea is, how can we how can we bring automation to all those processes in order to increase, again, the productivity, the employee satisfaction. It also has a direct impact in the customer satisfaction, the time that it takes to answer a customer requirement, or to process a payment for a partner, for a supplier, or things that, again, keep the business going and are really relevant to ensure that the operation and the agility of the business remains. So in the next slides, we are going to explore some of the top areas, some of the top automation areas. It's not that these ones that we are going to mention are the only ones. It's just, again, an idea. How can you start this process with your customers? What type of processes you should look at? And after you identify some of these processes and the specific use cases around these processes, we can build a heat map. So we can build a roadmap with our customer around the automation strategy. What are we going to automate first? What's going to be next? What's going to be perhaps a long-term plan for the automation within the organization? So we can have this structure, and we can have, again, this plan with our customers. So one of the top areas is the procure to pay, right? And within each area, we're going to see that we have a number of use cases, a number of activities that are around the finance and the accounting area, of course. For example, around the activities, how can we keep track of the different activities that have to do with the procurement process, right? How can we evaluate the performance of the process or the different tasks that are part of the process, and how can we come with a new strategy to improve that process, and how can we keep track of the different interaction that we have, the relationship that we have with our suppliers, with our partners, and even with our customers, right? So the opportunity to oversee the improvement areas. And then specifically for the purchase goods and services, some of the use cases might start with, submitting a requisition, right? How can we make sure that that requisition is submitted at the adequate time, right? So we don't get out from with inventory, right? That might interrupt the production of the organization in the company, that might also affect the delivery time and the general customer satisfaction. So we need to understand how that supply chain, of course, impacts the overall results of the organization, of the business, and how can we make sure that that process or any process starts at the right time? How can we bring automation in the generation of purchase orders, for example? Another areas or tasks around the procure to pay. Now, how are we going to manage all the receipt of the goods and the services, right? How are we going to make sure that the goods and the services are correct, that they are aligned with the requirements, with the requisitions? How are we going to address if we have to make some sort of returns, of apply a guarantee in case that applies with a particular supplier? How are we going to keep track of our inventory and make sure that we are not running out of a particular element in an inventory, right? And again, how can we trigger the process of the procurement, right? Of the purchase process, and how can we process then the invoices, right? Now that we received all the goods, how are we going to make sure that we apply the payments accordingly to our suppliers, right? And how we are going to keep track of all the transactions for those payments, and if we have some discrepancies, how are we going to keep track of those? And then it comes the actual payment process, right? How are we going to keep track of that payment process? How are we going to keep track of the bank accounts? How are we going to conciliate the funds in our different bank accounts? It has to do also with another area that we're going to mention further in this presentation, with the treasury area. But yeah, these two activities or processes within the organization and are part of the same result that we are looking for, right? Keep track of the payments, of the funds that we have in different accounts, and how can we address some sort of exceptions, or perhaps emergency processes, payment processes for a particular requirement, things like that, right? How are we going to handle exceptions as well? And then it comes all the report part, all the analysis, right? How are we going to manage and oversee all those reports? How are we going to deliver all that information to the relevant teams, right? How are we going to handle, perhaps if someone needs a very specific or particular information, how can we generate those particular ad hoc reports for for the different stakeholders, right? Another top automation area is the order to cash. And this starts with even the customer onboarding process, right? When the company has new customers or is trying to acquire new customers, how are we going to add all that information of those new customers in our system, right? How are we going to create those profiles? How are we going to keep all the information updated? If we need to also generate some reports or share that customer information with other areas within the business, how are we going to, sometimes customers apply for credit or finance options, right? How are we going to generate those applications? How are we going to analyze those applications and, make sure that everything is, legally online? How are we going to establish the different pricing in contract terms with the different customers, with the different accounts, again, the different terms and conditions that are going to apply with every customer relationship, and how are we going to keep track of that information? So something that you could do is, start analyzing how this process goes for your customer's organization. If this is a manual process, what this depends on, it depends on, perhaps an account manager passing that information to the appropriate area, to the legal area, for example, validate that information, a back and forth of documents, and how long does it usually takes to complete that customer onboarding. And that's how you can find, these opportunities to bring automation to this particular process. And I already mentioned the part of the credit, right? According to all that information that we have of our customers and a customer organization, how can we assess the risk? How can we evaluate if we are going to authorize a new customer credit, or how are we going to complete some credit checks? Things like that. Other processes, the fulfill order, how to execute orders, how are we going to handle returns, how are we going to generate reports, if we have some sort of promotions or incentives for customers, perhaps we have some sort of rebates or chargebacks. How are we going to keep track of that? What's the process or the situation that is going to trigger those scenarios, right? And how are we going to make sure that we are applying the policies accordingly to each different customer relationship or each vendor partner relationship that we have? Now, another example of a different area, it could be, the record to report. So in this area, some of the use cases that might arise are around the planning around the budget. How can we forecast the demands in terms of inventory, for example, in terms of human resources, and other resources that might be critical for the business agility, for the operation of the business, and how can be planned accordingly, right? How are we going to perform all the cost management, and how are we going to evaluate the performance, the overall financial performance of the organization? What pieces of information do we need for that? The interaction with different teams within the organization, and how are we going to perform that general reporting accordingly? I mentioned earlier that also within the treasury area, some processes are also automation prone. We mentioned an example of, how are we going to keep track of and conciliate the information of different bank accounts, for example. In this case, we have two areas: manage the treasury process and procedures, and manage cash. So how are we going to apply all the governance policies accordingly? If we need to establish and share those policies with the organization, with other areas of the organization, how are we going to monitor and audit those processes? And how are we going to manage the different transactions, the payments, all our responsibilities that we have with our different suppliers and vendors, with our employees, with the general ecosystem of the organization, of the business? How are we going to oversee different fund transfers, different payments? How are we going to develop those cash flow forecasts and analyze for example, some fees that different finance organizations apply to the services that they are providing to the organization. How are we going to manage the risk as well? Right? Not only executing the transactions, but keep track of those transactions, making sure that we don't have any some sort of errors, that everything is according to what we have in our invoice management, in our invoice system, that according to what the business is expecting to receive and in the next period. And all of these processes usually require a number of people interacting with different tools, with different systems within the organization. Adding all this information manually. This information might come from different formats, different types of formats that customers and suppliers and our organization as well are working in a different way. So conciliate all that information might be difficult for most of our customers. So again, remember that these areas are not exclusive of the finance and accounting industry, but any finance area within any organization has this type of processes. So once you identified the top processes, the main business use cases, the next step is build your heat map. So we have in this, just again, this is just an example. Remember, by the way, that we're going to be sharing with you the slide deck. So we have these top areas, right? And within these top areas or processes, we have a number of tasks that we can automate, right? So the idea is that you identify, you and your customers, you identify the high automation potential, the processes that have the highest automation potential, the medium automation potential, and the low automation potential. So the idea is that we can build a strategy around which process are we going to start with which process we are going to start the automation first, right? So the idea is that not only choose the processes that have this high automation potential, but that also are going to be capable to bring quick wins to our customers organization, right? That we are going to be able to achieve results faster. So we can have, again, these quick wins that it's going to motivate our customers, the different teams, when we are realizing the results, when we are achieving the different goals, and we can keep, we can continue with the next process, and then we move to the medium automation potential. So this way you can build a roadmap with your customers, right? What we are going to do first, what are we going to do next in the next quarter, for the next semester, for the next year. So you're making not only a long-term plan with your customer, but also you are putting roadblocks in the way for your competitors, right? Since you have a plan, since we already have this plan in progress with the customer, with the organization, we have all this organized, and we are demonstrating the value for our customers organization. So it is going to be more difficult for our competitor to land on that account. So now I'm going to share with you a couple of examples, a couple of success stories around, some of the processes that we just mentioned in the previous section. So for example, in just the creating sales order process, for this customer, we achieve a reduction in 90% of the processing time. It was 100% automated, this process, so the error rate is practically zero, right? So the challenge started when the employees had to manually retrieve all the sales orders information from their clients through a client's portal. So again, they require to put all this information manually in the ERIP and then share this information with multiple applications. They need to enter the information once again in an Excel format, then put that in the CRM. So it took them a lot of time and company resources to complete this process. So once we add the automation through UiPath into this client's portal to gather all the required information and to reference that information to these other applications that they also need as part of the process, so that sales order creation was simplified, was a faster process without errors. It also improved not only the efficiency of the sales team and all the service representatives, but also it saved money to the company, and it increased the customer satisfaction as well. Another example here for daily bank reconciliation information. So another example of how the automation reduced the processing time in 95%. The implementation for the entire system, all the different proof process, the adjustments, this was in about 10 weeks, and the return of investment was achieved in only 3 months for this customer. So in this case, they had to reconcile all the payments received through the different means from their customers, and all the adjusting of the different journal entries was manually. All the analysis of the different charges in the different bank accounts, all the activity on the different bank accounts. It was a process that took employees about an hour a day, and it was a manual process. So once we apply the UiPath robot automation, now it allows the company to automatically download all the different bank statements of the different organizations of the different banks and file all that information into their ERP. So automatically this reconciliation process starts and types out the different items that don't reconcile, approximately 20% of this information, and notifies the analyst of those items that need, particular attention and that needs the employee intervention, right? So again, the implementation was very fast, and compared with the ROI, in just 3 months, the customer achieved the return of the investment, and they reduced the amount of manual labor and the amount of processing time, the manual effort, and was reduced, and the employee satisfaction was increased. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to share with you a video with an example of how this automation process looks like in a finance area, in the finance industry. So let me just change my audio here, and then I'm going to start sharing my screen with this video.
Have you ever wondered what robotic process automation, or RPA, can do for you? In short, it provides a competitive advantage by helping you improve both accuracy and speed of operations while radically driving down costs. So how does it work? In this video, we'll show you how UiPath streamlines an invoice process end to end. You are about to see a robot performing the following activities: monitoring a dedicated folder where invoices are saved in PDF format, reading invoices from that folder one by one, extracting key information from the invoices, opening SAP, filling in invoice details in SAP, sending email notifications. Please note that the robot will do some activities in the background, such as most of the invoice-related actions, monitoring a folder or checking its email address. Now let's see it working. Right now, it's monitoring a folder where 3 invoices are stored and collecting all the information needed so it can register them one by one. It then asks the tester to introduce the email address where the posting notification will be sent, and also performs basic checks to see if the SAP is open and runs it on its own if not. Logging into SAP using its credentials, it then starts processing the invoices one by one. We can see it filling in data such as vendor code, invoice date, invoice number, invoice amount, invoice description, and GL account, and ends up by filling the payment term. Following that, it registers the remaining 2 invoices in the assigned company code. An email email containing the SAP registration number is sent automatically by the robot after successfully registering each invoice. Checking in the background, the robot verifies whether the VAT on the invoice matches the one in our database, and if so, will post it automatically. Otherwise, it will park it and send a dedicated email to the responsible person highlighting this difference and asking what to do. Post the invoice or to cancel it and send it back to the vendor. All the invoice's details are visible in the email it sends, so let's reply with yes to the message for an invoice with a VAT difference. Finally, it will check its email address in the background, access SAP using the appropriate transaction code, and post the invoice. And that's it. The robot has successfully posted the 3 invoices in SAP. Do you want to know more? We're happy to help. Contact us here.
Okay, so what we're going to do next is talk about the added value that Ingram Micro has for all the UiPath partners that are, that have opportunities around automation, and what services and all the support and the professional services that you can receive from the Ingram Micro side, right? So what's the value for you in this business relationship with UiPath through Ingram Micro? So the idea is that we can provide you and all our partners with different services along the business life cycle with your customers. Like, for example, starting with training services, right? What if you right now you don't have a team that has all this expertise and knowledge around the automation processes and the automation opportunities? So we can assist you through these hyperautomation professional services, starting with the all the expertise that our team members of this hyperautomation team have. You can also reduce the staff costs, eliminate the need to hire an automation expert, for example, or while your team starts, building their automation practice, you don't need to let go some opportunities with your customers just because you don't have that expertise or that experience. You can start working with the hyperautomation Ingram Micro team. They are going to be able to assist you again in all the process, the opportunities that you have with your customers, starting from identifying, the potential of automation for a particular process, a particular use case, all the way through the life cycle of that opportunity. It's going to help you to identify more opportunities within your customer's organization. You're going to be able to access our specialists, our SMEs, to validate your designs or your proposals for your customers. And your organization has the ability to scale and to increase your all your expertise and your abilities around the automation opportunities through the services of the hyperautomation team in Ingram Micro. So the idea is that you can have access to a list of customized SKUs, and you can assign any number of services that you need around a particular opportunity from the hyperautomation team. So you're not only, increasing the number of opportunities that you can develop around automation, around the UiPath solutions, but also you can increase the value of each of those opportunities. As I mentioned, the hyperautomation team is there for you every step of the way, starting from the discovery process. Be part of your discovery process, identifying business opportunities with your customers, develop the strategy for that customer. Of course, in the implementation, in the maintenance, or even in the end-to-end process with the customer, right? So through the different activities and the different stages of that business relationship with your customers, you can um, you can access the services and the expertise of the Hyperautomation team, and you can add any number of services that you need throughout that life cycle of that opportunity, right? So you can access the different SKUs, the different services, the approach of those different services, and have this support from the team, and don't miss any opportunity just because you don't have perhaps the expertise, the abilities, or even the tools right now to develop that opportunity with your customers. Just get in touch with the Hyperautomation team. I'm going to share with you the link on the chat window. If you need more information, if you need to contact the experts, you can access all the info that you need and the different resources through the link that you have on the chat window. You can also scan the QR code, and that's the way you can access all the resources and services that Ingram Micro has for you and your organization. Now, in the next part, in the next section of this session, we are going to talk about how you can build a demand generation strategy. So we have the example of the finance and accounting processes, but this is going to apply to any other processes, any other industry that you have, within your customer base. And the idea is that you can use different resources and activities to build your demand generation strategy. So we're going to start with some recommendations if you want to work with online events or workshops or webinars. So some recommendations before, during, and after the event. And in these recommendations, we are also going to mention things like emails campaign or calls campaign, outcall campaigns. So we are also going to consider those type of resources and activities for the demand generation strategy. So for an online event, some of the best practices and recommendations before the event, everything starts with choosing a topic, right? That is going to be relevant or is going to be of interest of most of your audience. So if most of your customers are in the finance industry, of course, the idea is that you choose a topic that is going to be relevant for those customers. But what if you have, a customer base that is mixed, right? You have finance, perhaps you have manufacturing, you have insurance, you have customers from different healthcare, for example, from different industries. So try to choose a topic that considers a process that is common for all those customers or most of your customers. That way you can have a rich audience, a considerable number of attendees on your event. So the idea is choose that topic accordingly and invite your customers at least 10 days before the session, right? That way they have the chance to add the event to their agendas, to their calendars, send reminders, and if possible, call the participants to attend. So when you send those invitations, give the attendees the opportunity or give the participants the opportunity to register for the event. That way you're going to be able to know, how many people you are going to expect to join your event, and you can call those potential attendees before the event and make sure that they assist to the session. Of course, the speaker that you choose for that event is very important. If you're going to perform a session that is going to be more business oriented, try not to take the conversation to the technical part, because you're going to lose your audience, right? If your audience is non-technical audience, you need to keep the conversation and the language to the level that your audience is expecting, right? If you are if you want to deliver a session that is going to be more technical, then of course the speaker must be technical, right? So the idea is that you keep the message, that you keep the level accordingly to the objectives of that session. And all the materials that you use for the session, starting from the emails that you're going to send, for the invitations and the presentations and all the materials that you're going to use for that event, they need to be visually appealing. So the idea is that use the colors and the graphics that allow your customers or your potential customers to identify your brand and UiPath's brand clearly, right? So the very moment that they receive your first email, they know that this is about you and this is about your company, or this has to do with your company, and this is about UiPath, and this is about automation, right? Now, during the event, if you're going to be sharing some links, references, analysis from the industry, things like that, try to share the links with the audience, through the chat window, or QR code, so it's easy for everyone to access that information. If you decide to share the presentation, the slide deck, of course, that's also recommended. That's usually appreciated by the audience. The recording, record your session, so you can share that recording with the audience that perhaps they registered to the session but they weren't able to attend the event. So you can share the recording with everyone, the ones who attended the session and the ones that weren't able to join the activity. And try to also add a moderator for the session, right? That way, if some of your attendees have some technical difficulties to join the session, to join the audio, they are not able um, to see what's being sharing on the screen or things like that, the moderator is going to be able to assist them, and that way this process is not going to distract the speaker and take time out of the actual session or lecture. Now, after the event, of course, send the recording to your attendees and review the responses of the surveys, the satisfaction surveys. Very important to apply those type of surveys. And in those surveys, you're also going to be able to ask your potential customers or your customers for their strategy around automation. Apply band questions if they have the budget for automation, if they have right now the need for automation, or for to apply automation in a particular process within their organization, if they have the authority to take to make that decision, if they're not the correct contact for that, who might be, if they can contact you with a correct person in the organization that's in charge of the automation strategy, the timeline, when they are considering to enable the automation for that process in the organization, right? So all those types of questions could be part of your survey, and it's very important for you to review the answers as soon as the session ends. That way you can call your customers, your potential customers, those who said that they were interested, and send a thank you email to everyone who came, and the recording again to those who did not attend. And you can develop a script for the calls, so that way, even though perhaps it's very common that our different account managers, for example, are going to be making those calls to the different customers, but if you develop a script, that way you can always ask, or you can make sure that your account managers always ask the same questions. They gather the same information from your different customers and contacts, and you can document that information accordingly, right? And that's going to save you a lot of time. We have a number of tools that you can use for this process, from creating the emails, from the delivery of the session, from the presentation. So you can work with any tools that you want to. For the contents, as part of this program, of this effort through Ingram Micro, we're going to be sharing with you a demand generation kit. You're going to receive a number of email templates that consider different industries, different use cases for different industries. So you can work with those resources, with those marketing resources. You can just customize those emails and work with them for your demand generation strategy. So again, if you decide to go for just an email marketing campaign, not necessarily around an online event or a webinar, but for an email marketing campaign, as we already mentioned, the graphic image needs to be very appealing to your customers, should be aligned to the campaign image, should be consistent, throughout the different messages and emails that you're going to be sharing with your customers. Try to make it relevant for most of your customers. Talk about use cases that are going to be relevant for most of your customer base, for most of your contacts. And use automation tools. Of course, we are talking about automation, so we need to consider that in our process as well. Some might consider that if I just need to send, 100 emails, that could be a manual process. Again, one account manager sends 25 emails, another account manager sends another 25 emails, and so on. But the idea is that through the automation tools, you're going to be able to access all the analysis around the interaction that your customers had with those emails, right? How many emails were opened, how many clicks on the link for the event, for the registration, for example, or for a landing page, how many unsubscribe from your list. So that lets you know about the interest that your customers and your contact list has around, the topic that you are sharing with them. And that allows us and allows your marketing team to pivot the strategy, right? If we need to change perhaps the subject of the email, and we can see that we have a different interaction just with that change, just with that adjustment. That's some sort of the idea that, of the benefits that we can achieve through those automation tools for our email campaign. And for outcall campaigns, you have two options. You can work with your internal staff or with a call center. So in our experience, to have an effective call, this means that the contact answer the call and allow the team to deliver the message, the complete message. To be able to achieve that, we need to perform at least 5 calls to to a same contact, right? To the single contact. So if you have a contact base of 100 contacts, that's going to be around 500 calls. So do you have enough staff, and your staff has enough time to perform those, that number of calls? So when we make this analysis, working with a call center is no longer, a crazy idea, right? And right now we have a number of, offerings in the market, very accessible services. So once again, one way or the other, doesn't matter what you choose, the recommendation is build a script, right? Have this structure for your calls, of course, the salutation, establish the situation, share the idea with your contact with the customer, how this works, what are going to be the benefits for the organization, if you have any promotion or something like that to share that's relevant right now, how can we build a sense of urgency, for example, and then evaluate the interest and the qualification questions. Remember the band questions, the budget, the authority, the need, and the timeline or the time frame. So you can document, take note of each candidate's answers, and analyze those answers and keep track of the potential opportunities that arise through that outcall campaign. The other option, or another complement to your strategy, could be through social media, particularly through LinkedIn. So with LinkedIn, it's very easy to profile our candidates because we can choose the industry, the type of organization, the role for the particular persons that we want to reach, and you can establish a specific budget accordingly to how many impressions your campaign will reach. That's the budget that you are going to be spending daily on that campaign, and you're going to have reports that are going to be updated in real time so you can see the performance of your campaigns. Now, the idea here is that you need to add a information that is valuable, of that is of interest of your potential audience, because the idea is that when they click on the link, they need to share their contact information before they actually access the analysis, the white paper, whatever you are sharing with them. So it needs to be really interesting for that audience in order to make them complete the contact form and also submit the band questions, right? Again, the budget, the authority, the need, and the timeline, so you can understand and you can qualify those leads as well. So the idea is that you can build a demand generation strategy or a campaign that could look like this, right? Working with both an email campaign and a webinar or an online event. You can start with that email campaign, like in preparation for your event, just making your customers or your potential customers anxious about what you have to tell them, what you have to share with them, what is this thing that is going to absolutely change their organization. So you can start with the first 3 emails of the campaign, and then on the week 4 you can send the invitation to the webinar or to your online event. The week for week 5 we have the reminder. You can also call your all the attendees or the contacts that register for that event. And on week 6, you deliver the webinar. And on week 7, all the past event follow-up, all the calling, the follow-up of all those contacts that were interested on the information and the solutions that you share with them on the webinar. And remember that you're going to receive, as part of this program, your demand generation marketing toolkit with a number of email templates that you can customize, but are ready for you to just start sending them to your customers, to start building your demand generation strategy around UiPath's solutions, automation solutions. Again, we consider a number of different industries, so you can plan accordingly and share the different messages with your customers. All these messages are end user faced and are already approved by UiPath, so you don't have to worry about that. And if you have any opportunity around automation with UiPath, if you have any questions regarding your business relationship with UiPath, with Ingram Micro, if you have any particular questions and you would like some of the SMEs to reach out to you, to your company, and work with your team and address that opportunity, you can answer the survey. You can leave your contact information and your questions on this survey. You have the link on the chat window. You can also scan the QR code. Sorry, that's not the link. Sorry. My copy tools failed. I don't know why they copy and paste the Hyperautomation link. So I'm going to try once again. Copy. There you go. Now we have the correct link. So in the chat window, we have the link to the survey. You can also scan the QR code and let us know how we can assist you with your automation opportunities. How can we also improve all the services and sessions and all the activities that we have for you as an Ingram Micro partner for your UiPath strategy. So once you complete that survey, that will be it. This is what we had to share with you today for this presentation, for this session. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for making time for us in your agenda. And don't forget to answer the survey. Thank you.